it'll be like you're going into REM, and then an audio cue will play. It will say, dream about your mother now, right? It'll actually say that auditorily, and that's one of the triggers to trigger the dream. And then a little bit later, they wake you up, right? So that's how they do it. So why couldn't Alexa do this?
Have you ever heard of DMAE?
No.
So this is a supplement that I've taken. It's a precursor to choline or acetylcholine in your brain. Now, I've been taking this super cheap too, really, really cheap. But it's amazing how I can remember all my dreams now. And yeah, they're absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And Jung would have a field day. But it's like, I think there's like 120 pills in it, and you get like for $10. It's just absolutely ridiculously cheap.
So you would remember the dream that you just woke up from. That's
probably the most recent one.
And so what they do it over at MIT and the MIT sleep training lab, when they're trying to do dream recognition, right? And they have this really cool device that measures it's a whole hand device, and it's measuring your sleep stages. And when you get to specific stages, it wakes you up so that then you will write down your dreams. And so cool. You're cued to it's like, okay, we're in REM for 5 minutes. Boom. Okay. Come out. Tell me what you were dreaming. And it's only that most recent dream that you can get. But one cool thing that they're doing there, and they love naps, right? Naps are their thing. Right. One thing that they're doing is like, okay, let's say you want to have a dream about your mother who passed. Right. I haven't had a conversation with my mother's alive, but like, let's say passed, and dreams actually have been really, really useful for mourning or PTSD and other things like that, where you have this sort of safe space to deal with things. And they can trigger a mother dream by doing certain preparations beforehand. That sort of like get you into the mindset of having a dream about your mother. You say to yourself, I want to dream about my mother, blah, blah, blah. And then they have like an 85% success rate in triggering a dream about your mother.
Wow.
Amazing. Also, the other thing, which is creepy. Okay. So that's the amazing thing. And it's super useful. And it's really good for people in hospice. Like they said the most common dream, the most beneficial dream in hospice is if you're dying there. You have a dream about your spouse who has already passed. And like, that's usually really, really amazing. And they can trigger these, which is great.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's go to dystopia for a second.
Okay. Here we come.
Amazon's thinking about advertising you in your dreams. Yep. Alexa.
Oh my God. Well, they're already listening.
Yes. Because so here's the problem is that it can track your sleep stages. Right. If all the data is linked up, it knows when you went to sleep. It's like, okay, around right now, you're going to be at your most suggestible point in hypnagogic, whatever. And it will say something to you so that you will dream about it and it will be subconscious. And that's supposed to go online in 2023, 2024 is what I've been told by, some of my sources. So that's the horror show that's coming for us.
Yeah. As from my research when it comes to like subconscious, like subliminal messages and whatnot, they say that they're really not that effective. But
it's cheap.
Yeah.
And what if it works? Like we now have 8 hours of uninterrupted time to advertise to you while you're sleeping. I mean, I hope that you're right, that you can't do it. But since I know that you can have a dream about your mother,
that does lead us to think, well, okay.
Yeah. And when the cue that will often come is like, it'll be like you're going into REM, and then an audio cue will play. It will say, dream about your mother now. Right. It'll actually say that auditorily. And that's one of the triggers to trigger the dream. And then a little bit later, they wake you up. Right. So that's how they do it. So why couldn't Alexa do this? Like, they know a lot of shit about it.
Well, and your phone, right? So that's what most people have right next to their bed. First thing we look at when we wake up, last thing we look at when we go to sleep.
The sleep studies conducted in 94 on melatonin are probably the best ones we have, but they're still studying it. So there's still stuff going on. What it's good for is like sort of resetting your circadian clock to the appropriate time. So it's very useful for jet lag. Okay. So you
Mhm.
get to a new place and like about 2 hours before you go to bed, and it does take about that time. So it's not like right before you fall asleep, but about an hour, 2 hours before you take melatonin, it can start putting you on the correct time zone, because melatonin is triggered by light, diminishing light. Okay. So what you want to do is, before you're going to go to bed, do the melatonin so that it sort of like squishes you back to the correct moment. The other, and food's also another important trigger for that. Melatonin, interestingly, is only one CO2 molecule away from DMT. So fucking
Yes.
deal with that for a second. It has a consciousness moment, and you breathe out CO2. So is there a connection? I don't know. Maybe, probably, almost definitely. But melatonin is not actually known to be very good for falling asleep chemically. It can be good vis-a-vis the adherence or placebo effect. You take a pill, this pill will make me sleep. It could be a sugar pill, it could be anything. And that might have an effect on you to allow you to fall asleep, because your mind is like, oh, it's my sleepy thing. And so that's okay. I will say that the dosages of melatonin are usually too high. It's usually 5-10 milligrams. And also they have time release, which is like bananas bad idea. Like you'll never wake up if you're on time release melatonin. But your brain puts out like 0.02 or 0.2 milligrams instead. So the lower end is probably better biologically. I will say that the general consensus in the sleep science community is that sleep aids, sort of like a benzodiazepine or something that might make you fall asleep, it can be good in a pinch, especially under doctor supervision, but really bad over the long term. Like you get sleep dependence. For instance, in the last over the summer, I went to Europe, and I started taking Benadryl to go to sleep because it will let me fall asleep. And then when I came back, because I'll do that, I'll do the melatonin and the Benadryl to sort of like put me on that curve.
Right.
But then I just took it for like 2 weeks that I was abroad, and then I had terrible sleep as I weaned myself off for about 2 weeks. So that's sort of the like with any drug, there's benefits if you use it responsibly.
Yeah. What I have found in my use of melatonin, and there's a video on my channel about this, that, there's all sorts of reports that it's not habit forming. But in my personal experience, my parents or my family, we had a nutrition store growing up. I grew up in a nutrition store, and in the 90s, it was the big thing. It was like this is a miracle hormone that you can take. It's over the counter.
Right.
And so it was linked to reduced risk of like certain cancers back then. And there was it was this miracle thing. And so I said, well, I better get on this stuff. And I slept better. And then I took it for years, and then research came out that, okay, you can actually harm your own ability to produce melatonin. And I did notice that if I didn't have it, boy, I couldn't go to sleep. And so it took a long time for me to get off of melatonin. Now I still do take it sometimes, like I said, when traveling. So I have to travel through time zones quite a bit. And so that's really helpful. But there's also a lot of research that the dosage is just haywire. So you'll get something that says 3 milligrams, which if you're going to take it, I would recommend never taking more than 3 milligrams, but who knows? It could have 10 milligrams. It could have no milligram. It just all over the place, apparently, with those. What do you think about hops? Do you know anything about hops?
I got nothing. I've never even heard of hops being used for sleep. I will say that beer is not good for sleep, and that comes from hops, but that's all I got. That's
So hops is one of those things. They've actually started making some non-alcoholic beer. There's a brand I tried called Hop Water, and it's got a lot of hops in it, specifically for the flavor, but also it does have a little bit of a sedation effect. One of the things, if I were thinking about napping, I would say something like hops would be all right, just because I wouldn't want to take something in it that's going to keep me sleepy for the rest of the day.